Clunes Booktown Festival is a celebration of the book, filled with bookstalls, author talks, workshops and thought-provoking conversations in the historic Victorian township of Clunes.
I want to introduce the two giant talents that are on stage with us. Tuion is an arts journalist, critic and poet whose writing has appeared in The Guardian, The Saturday Paper, Sydney Review of Books, The Age and SMH, and Australian Book Review, to name a few. Tui is currently reviews and literary editor of Arts Hub, a former Melbourne theatre critic correspondent for The Australian, and was the long-serving books editor for The Big Issue. Her three collections of poetry published by the University of WA Press include her 2020 debut Turbulence, Decadence, which was longlisted for the Stella Prize, and Essence, out this year. She also contributed to Spinning Around, the Kylie playlist, and we should be so lucky that the writer and poet joins us in Clunes. Please welcome to Spinning Dicks, hello, Discs, Tuion. Round of applause, everyone. You never know what you might get. And Jordan Prosser is an author, performer, founding member of internationally touring theatre collective Too Many Weapons, and a filmmaker whose feature screenplays have secured worldwide release and along the way won Jordan the Slamdance Screenplay Competition and the Shaw Script International Prize for Screenwriting. Jordan, in 2022, won the Peter Carey Short Story Award for a work that has blossomed into his debut novel Big Time, a very funny anti-fascist ode to the power of pop music. And to share his insights with us at Clunes, the gregarious gig-goer, joins us now. Jordan, welcome to Spinning Discs.
Thank you very much.
So how did you, when you knew that you were going to be appearing on this panel, what flooded your mind? How did you want to approach today, or how did you interpret spinning discs and writing and music?
I think for me, the first thing that came to mind was the contrast in the way that we've written about music, in the sense that, like, I'm most familiar with the Kylie playlist and the fact that there you're writing about, you know, extraordinarily well-known songs, like stuff that millions of people have these very deep emotional connections to. And that's sort of one way of writing about music, I think. Whereas in my book, it's complete fiction. It's a made-up band playing made-up songs. So I think in that sense, I have the benefit that none of my so-called music writing has any sort of cultural baggage associated with it. It's incredibly liberating. I can kind of just say, you know, I can kind of tell without showing. I can kind of just say, oh, and the music made people feel like this, and then it's up to the reader to kind of fill in the blanks, I suppose, to use their imagination as to what that actual song sounds like. So I think what you've done in the Kylie playlist is actually much harder.
Actually, when I was asked to contribute a poem to Spinning Around the Kylie playlist, I was like, really? Me? I wasn't a huge Kylie fan. And so I thought, fine, if I'm going to write a poem based on a Kylie song, I'm going to do it my way. So my poem, even though it shares the same title as a Kylie song, which is Shocked, it actually is the complete opposite of the sentiment of the Kylie song. So I was being very perverse and thought, right, you're going to ask me to do something. I'm not going to, I'm going to play around with the concept and do the poem that I want to write. It's not actually based on any of the sentiments in the song.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that's where it took you.
That's where it took me.
It's interesting. You've been a literary critic for implausibly 25 years.
I know, too long.
And I'm wondering, what do you have a distinction between high and low art, or how do you approach that?
Honestly, Daniel, I think that the lines are becoming really muddied. And I don't think it really serves anyone to think that way anymore, because I just want people to read. I'm so heartened by the crowds at this festival. I've never been to this festival before. So I was saying to my colleague, who's like, oh my God, look at all these people. They're actual readers. They're my people. Because we constantly get told, oh, print is dead. No one's reading. We're all affixed to our screens. And writers like us don't get a word in, and yet there are people here who actually paid to get into a festival full of books.
Yeah.
So it gives me a lot of hope. So I think as a critic, obviously I have certain books that I'm drawn to, but I don't think it's helpful to say, right, this is low fiction and this is high fiction. I just think if you're reading, you're doing a lot better than most people who are like not reading.
Yeah.
So I just want people to read. I don't even care what you read. Whatever, comics, graphics, picture books, they're all words, or even listen to audiobooks. So yeah, I mean, maybe once upon a time when I started out as a critic, I was very, oh no, this is way too like below my, my interest, and I'm all snooty about it. But after 25 years in the business, I'm like, you know what, just read.
What about both of your tastes? Have they evolved musically or in the written word? But obviously, we're here to talk music. As a third-party observer to your own tastes, how do you interpret your evolution?
You mean of what sort of time frame?
Well, maybe even down to when you're a teenager.
Oh, gosh. Well, I think that's the stuff that kind of haunts you, right? Like, I think your 20s is when you're malleable enough and enough of a sponge, you're soaking everything up, but then you kind of set, don't you? And then that's the problem, is the rest of your life is going, yeah, it's not as good as it used to be, which is a lot of what my book is about as well, is about the dangers of sort of becoming too set in your ways culturally or socially or politically or any of that. So I've tried very actively to retain an open mind when it comes to my music consumption. It doesn't always work. There are certain things out there, especially in modern music, where it's just like, there's just nothing firing in my brain. There's nothing for me here. And it's for someone else, and that's fine. That's beautiful. But I think, I don't know, I guess there really is like, I think you inherit the music that your parents give you, and you always love it. So I'll still always love the Beatles and Crowded House and Joni Mitchell, even though that was before my time. And then probably, maybe up to like 2018, which is when I turned 30. And then I think it's like, that's kind of my half century of music that will always make me feel the same way.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
It's funny. I remember went to Cherry Bar not long ago, and it was probably 2 a.m. or something, and there were people much younger than me. They were dancing to, say, the Killers and the Strokes with the same kind of nostalgia as I think I did to the Kinks. I wasn't alive, but I was dancing to my parents' music, and it feels like the kids are doing the same. But there is a through line, isn't there? And I wonder, Dweeb, if you always have to appraise what's new. Do you ever just want to draw a line under it and go, I cannot possibly consume more?
I think that all the time. I honestly, my musical taste, I set back, like, I'm almost embarrassed to say, but for example, my first book, Turbulence, I wrote about it in the blog, and I said one of my musical inspirations was Pulp. I loved the band so much. It was on continuous play when I wrote that book. Not just because I really loved the way Jarvis Cocker wrote lyrics. It just reminded me to be true, to be honest, to be like, no fucking around with like weird language and being pretentious. But he was very, the common man, the common people language.
Yeah.
So that got me through my first book. And I mean, look, when I write, I don't know about you, but I think poetry, at least my poetry, some of them can be construed as lyrics. In fact, I had 2 recent launches. My launch for Decadence and Essence. What I did was I asked a musician to turn one of the poems into song, and it just went beautifully because I really love the idea of cross-fertilization of art forms. Just because you're a poet doesn't mean that your words can't be song lyrics.
Yeah.
There's like this fine line, and it's usually crossed.
What did you make of Bob Dylan winning the Nobel Prize for Literature?
I thought it was great. Good for him. I think it just opened up the idea that, wow, okay, songwriting, literature. That's what I'm saying, the blurring of high and low art forms.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
Yeah. And Jordan, you write about a band, the inner workings of the band. Can you furnish us with the musical knowledge or the creative playfulness that you have to go through, and maybe even your experience of nailing that dynamic?
Sure. I can talk a bit about my research, if you count just like reading music books and watching music documentaries research, which I do. It's not from experience, and that's part of actually what made me want to write about a band and incorporate a band into my first book. Was I was never in a band, and I always desperately wanted to be. It was kind of still, having worn many different creative hats, I was never the front man in a band, and I'm willing to accept that I probably never will be now. that ship may have sailed. But I think what that did, it also meant that I'd never had that kind of experience soured for me, the way that maybe, you know, so many people who dream of getting into it, and then they get into it and then it's not quite what they hoped. And so I was still in a position where I could kind of write about it from this place of, you know, deep-seated admiration, the way that all the entourage around the band in the book still sort of look up to them and lionize them. And so to gain some sort of understanding, and for, you know, for those who haven't read it, it's sort of your very classic, like, they're recording the second album, the first album was a hit, everything falls apart at the seams, big personalities clashing. Like, it's a real sort of cultural shorthand that we all have for those sorts of groups. So I read one amazing book by a writer named Michael Azerrad called Our Band Could Be Your Life, and true to the name, if anyone knows the lyrics, it's about the San Diego and San Francisco punk scene in the 70s, 80s. It's a chapter dedicated to each band. So it's like Minutemen and Black Flag and Dinosaur Jr. And it's just this really, really beautiful, rigorous exploration of like the punk scene coming out of those cities during that time, really capturing a moment, really capturing a scene. And then another film I watched sort of on repeat was the Metallica documentary, Some Kind of Monster. Has anyone seen that? Oh, it's fantastic. It's so good. Like a train wreck, though. It's crazy. These are I think it was sometime in the 2000s when they were like the most profitable band in the world, just about. And they've been sent back into the studio, given limitless resources, and just kind of squander it. Just don't know what to do. Just can't keep their shit together, can't keep their egos in check. And it's you know, it's kind of like the ideal text for what I was going for in this. So I borrowed a lot from books and from films like that.
But it's also the playlists, because we know the album titles, we know the track list. Metamorpha, can you finish that song title?
Misanthropotopia.
Yeah. Now, that's a beautiful, you can absolutely see that reading the liner notes.
Yeah. That was part of the fun too, I think. Like I was saying before, none of this music exists. And so instead I got to sort of build the world around the music, like build the detailed track listings of every album and come up with like a lot of the lyrics and the time signatures and the track lengths. And, you know, I made like pretend merchandise to give out as thank you gifts that were like the band t-shirts for the fictional band.
Of the acceptables?
Yeah, of the acceptables, yeah. Because you come up with all this stuff, and then I think because we're writing about music, you know, the same as if you were writing about a work of art, there's always going to be a shortfall between you and the reader, where the reader has to cross that divide and kind of decide for themselves what something looks like or sounds like. So all I could do really was kind of, build that entire world, build that brand of the band, and then leave it for people to interpret.
Yeah. Twee, I want to ask at some point, helping people bridge that divide. But in terms of Essence, your third collection of poetry out now, all good bookstores. I wanted to wonder about the breadth of your taste and just how much you've consumed and how difficult or easier, if it feels almost counterintuitive, to funnel pre-existing art into your own.
That's a hard question, but it was a lot of fun actually. So the first part of Essence, for those who don't know it, so it's called Art. So it's actually my writing about different art forms. So not just music. So I'm writing about canonical texts and visual arts and movies. And usually these are the art forms that I consumed and I loved. So there are poems there, for example, about Death of a Salesman and Swan Lake, but also, you know, Kylie Minogue and The Cure. And there are 12 haiku for canonical texts that I've reduced them into a haiku for things like, you know, Frankenstein and all these, like, you think I can possibly, I think that's partly why I called it Essence. I was trying to get to the essence of the text. So I know it was a lot of fun because I have consumed so much in my critical life and also my current role as reviews editor. I'm constantly seeing shows and having to think about seriously what they mean, the essence of them, the core of them, and try and write them into this tiny bit of poetry, something that's obviously hours and of reading or hours of writing and everything else in like 3 lines or something. It was a lot of fun. It was like a game for me.
Well, speaking of the game, you brought up that Cure poem. Do you mind doing a reading for us?
Yeah, so this poem I just did out of pure fun. It was written actually after the Kylie, because the Cure is more like my taste. I'm thinking Kylie is she was always background, but I never really listened to her, but the Cure I did. So I wrote a poem out of Cure lyrics. Now I want you all, I don't know anyone love the Cure in the audience? Yeah, so all the Cure fans, I want you to start counting on your fingers how many Cure references, like the titles that you recognize, okay? Because I don't even know how many actually. I should actually know this, but I don't. So just bear with me while I try and find it. I don't know. What? Okay, this is called The Walk after the Cure. 100 days have passed. Let's rejoice at the end of an era. Take my hands into a forest to play for today. Lie traverse against a fallen branch. So close to me, we are in between days. Just say yes, it's never enough. A night like this. Let's go to bed on a sheet of mossy leaves. Underneath the stars in the hanging garden. Catch the lullaby of the love cats. This is our love song.
Tweet on everybody.
How many references did you get to the Cure? There are several there.
I love cats.
Okay. Yeah, one.
It makes me think of nostalgia.
Yes, Into the Forest, Love Cats.
Yeah,
There are many. There are at least 7 or 8 in there.
Yeah, because the Cure had an album out late last year or early this year. Late last year, Songs for a Lost World. And now Robert Smith doesn't do many interviews, but he did one, and he mentioned that the Lost World he's referring to really is about maybe he was growing up, there was the moon landing, and then everything seemed to be getting just incrementally better every year, and then it stopped. And it's not fashionable to say, but it seems to me that there's a pall of nostalgia about the Cure's new album, which I love. I don't love nostalgia, I love the album. And I'm wondering about your approach to nostalgia. Obviously, Jordan Big Time touches on this a lot. Is it excusable? Should it be approached with caution? What do you make of it?
I think, of course, like it's unavoidable, but I think the key is that it doesn't mean you should repeat something just because you love something. You know, I think it should be, I think part of it has to do with our like sort of deeply ingrained inability to let go of things. It's almost like, you know, it's almost like a grieving process to sort of be like, well, I loved something once, that time has passed. It'll always be there, and that's the beauty of books and music, obviously, is it is sort of crystallized. It's there forever. But if you then just try and replicate it again and again and again, all you're going to do is actually diminish the feeling that you got the first time around. That's my take.
Yeah. What about yourself?
I think everyone here in the room understands that if you love a song, it is very much set in stone at a certain time in place in your life, don't you? You go, right, that's the first time I was kissed, or that's when my mother died, or whatever. You associate that song forevermore. And every time you hear it, hence, that's where your mind goes to.
Yeah.
So that's that sort of nostalgic twinge. And I don't know what the answer to that is. I mean, to me, you know, you hear certain songs and that's it. There's never going to be another song that will replicate how you felt when you first fell in love.
Yeah.
Or when your pet died or whatever. That's that nostalgic, but it's kind of bittersweet, really. Isn't it?
Yeah, there's a weird habit of knowing the words to songs I didn't know the words to. Like, how do I get this like superficially nostalgic? And it's concerning. But I'm wondering, you have a playlist that accompanies your book.
Oh yes, sure, yeah. That my publishers asked me to put together.
Right.
And it's kind of more like a listen along while you read. Like there's a track for every chapter, and some of them are songs that are actually referenced. Others are artists that I was listening to while I was writing. So yeah, hopefully as a whole, it's sort of indicative of the feeling of the book. I think again because there's no actual existing music that I can anchor it to.
But Pete Temple, that's a band that looms large for you.
Who's that?
Pete Temple.
Yeah, great. They're great. And, they're an example of a band I saw probably 10 or 15 years ago at a festival, saw them live, and just felt really, really invigorated and really changed by them. And I think particularly their live performances are so great, and their live vocals. So I think all of that, whether consciously or not, that's all stuff that I was writing about when I'm writing about the concerts and the performances in the book.
Yeah. Blake Scott, who was the lead singer, he's still making music. And I think Nishatam was an extraordinary album that came out during lockdown. And there's a song on it, Bull Float Zen. And I feel like Pete Temple maybe Blake Scott is my bridging song to Triple M listeners for new music. I'm like, here, don't fucking tell me there isn't great new music and that everything stopped 20 years ago. And yeah, you have to kind of, this is the thing. If you look at the Triple J Hottest 100, I don't think there was a band, an actual band, maybe within the top 20. And if you look at the ARIA chart today, there's not a single Australian artist in the top 40. And the first one to appear is Vance Joy with Riptide, which came out maybe 12 years ago. Now, this is a huge fucking problem.
Wow, I didn't know that. Wow.
So what do you feel as being in touch with the culture? Where do you think we're at? Do you think it's a phase? What do you blame? Is there cause for optimism?
You mean like more Australian?
Yeah.
I don't think this is a problem that's just about Australian music. It's also, Australian authors, which is more for the more realm that I'm comfortable with. I always think try and support local as much as you can. I'm sure. I mean, yeah, we can get all parochial and say, yay, us. But honestly, if we don't support our local culture, who will? I'm a reviews editor of Arts Hub. And I say 90% of the reviews that I commission are Australian books. Of course, I get all sorts of international titles coming through, but every now and then I slip one in because I just want our local culture to be reviewed and celebrated. So, I mean, it's just a small thing, but I just feel it's important. So we are slowly starting to review music. We never used to historically, but people like Cat Powers, we had music, and my managing editor went to Port Fairy and reviewed that. So we're slowly bringing that into Arts Hub, which was traditionally, for some reason, kind of existed before my time. We only ever reviewed classical music by long dead composers. So it's lovely to have actual living singers and bands that we are now bringing, into Arts Hub readers. So it's just this little small thing, I think it's PJ Harvey, Cat Powers, and we're doing all of that. I mean, we still review Billie Eilish because you can't not do it, but yeah. But I think it's nice to have a mix, but it's slanted towards Aussie stuff.
And big time, your book, Jordan, it really speaks to, from my view, being in a band seems fun. It's a good way to spend time with your mates.
You think so?
Yeah. I mean, obviously it can combust and yada, yada, but it is something that, because there are a lot of, obviously music festivals are shutting down and insurance is very high and there are all of these reasons, but, and people are making music in their bedroom as well. But being in a band, there's something very exciting about it.
There is. And I think the one large element of nostalgia in the book that the characters, I think, strive for is that nostalgic idea of being in a band and being, quote unquote, the most famous band in the world, being the Beatles, being this sort of monocultural monolith. And I think what you're talking about, this kind of fracturing of music. I remember, 10, 15 years ago or so, there was a period where every song in the top 40 was a rhythm guitar and a person whistling over the top and then a hip hop verse in the bridge. And at the time, everyone was like, oh, we're approaching the singularity. It's just gone to the point where everything is kind of so, mixed in with one another that everything's going to sound the same. And I think everyone was kind of worried about that. And then what happened instead was the opposite, was everything completely fractured off into just as meaningful but much smaller subsets. So you have these subcultures now that exist completely separately from one another. And that's fantastic on the one hand because you can discover stuff from the other side of the world that you never would have heard before. It's disastrous in another way because the monoculture, though it can be misused, like is also the way that you make money, for one thing, as an artist, like having an actual really significant listener base. So it's democratic on the one hand, it's diluting on another, I think. As with so many things, it would be really great if we could be somewhere in the middle where it's like you can still have huge Australian bands in the top 5 of the hottest 100. But it's also beautiful that, yeah, people in their living rooms in Nebraska are making stuff on YouTube that's going to be the next number 1 hit. Like, you kind of just wish both could coexist, but I think invariably it's a pendulum, or one has just sort of taken over and eaten the other, and I don't think we can ever go back.
Yeah. What do you think of our cultural literacy right now? Are we getting dumber? I don't know.
Yes, in a word, I think. Which is not, I mean, look, it really depends on what you mean by cultural literacy. Do you want to define those 2 words? Because
sure.
culture,
Hearing a reference and knowing what it is.
I think it depends on the age group too, you know? And also culture as in, define culture. See, that to me is the big word here.
No, I would say all of it. I don't
okay.
give a shit. Fucking Kylie and Jason getting married.
Okay, that's a cultural
relevance. Or I don't know, Henry Lawson, if you like. I like all of it for my work and for enjoyment. Try to be, I've probably got a knowledge a mile wide, an inch deep or whatever, and it's still, I don't feel like it's anywhere near where, I don't want to be one of the smart ones. And I feel like there is a lot that people, when my parents were my age, they were more fluent in what's been gone and what's happening now. And I don't know if that's just a grumpy old man view, or if I'm actually reading the room properly, or that's unfashionable to say out loud, but that's my sense.
I only think the only way to counter that feeling that you just don't know enough about anything is just to try as many different art forms as possible. I think as we go older, sometimes we become so reduced in what we like, and I'm guilty of this too. Like, I'm not listening to that. That sounds crap. I don't like rap, whatever, and you just cut yourself off from different art forms. And it comes with, obviously books here. It's like, I'm not reading crime fiction, or I'm not reading romantasy or whatever. And then you just don't give yourself the chance to experience different art forms. And that's absolutely a loss. Because sometimes you just discover things by serendipity. It's like, wow, I didn't realize I would like this strange fantasy novel, but I actually do. Or my gosh, this crime fiction actually rocks, or whatever. Not all literary fiction is wonderful. Some are terrible. And the same with poetry. I mean, as a poet, I get this all the time. That when I tell people I'm a poet, most of the reactions like, oh, I don't understand poetry, it's so highfalutin and pretentious. And I'm like, oh my God, that's probably because you read this wrong poetry, or because you were force-fed it at school. And there are actually, amazingly enough, contemporary poets who you can actually understand without a degree in English literature. I try and write poetry that the average person can understand without having to run away to the dictionary and go, what the fuck does that mean? But, not all authors and not all poets are highfalutin and pretentious. It just has a bad rap.
Yeah.
So try and read widely. Try and open your mind to different music forms, and, it's just like a good reminder, because there's so much out there, and if you just cut yourself off, if you just go, I'm just going to read or listen to this band because I've listened to them for the last 10 years and I'm not moving forward,
It gets hard though, because at the same time, everyone cultivates their own taste, right?
Yeah,
and it's okay to have your own tastes. You spend your whole life working out what you like and don't like. So then it can be really, really difficult to go against those instincts and be like, all right, I'll try something completely new, something that I never otherwise would have looked into.
What do you do to expand your cultural curiosity?
To be honest, I probably rely far too much on the algorithms. I would like to be more active in my own, actually, seeking things out. And this is criticism, I believe, is still so important, even though it's such a difficult time for it, is it's a trusted, credible source who can open your eyes to something you may not have otherwise experienced in a way that, the algorithms never can. Yeah.
I do wonder whether the promise of the internet and the niching and the fracturing and all of that, ultimately the man wins, and record labels can dominate. Payola works in that space. We had Coldplay touring, and then you see the most listened to songs, and you can see people's algorithms just ticking over. Like it's mindless. It's not the promise of people just exploring what they're interested in. It feels like
Herding people into a specific direction.
I don't know why I'm shooting my mouth off so much, but sometimes it feels like talking to people. I feel like I'm talking to chatbots. Does anyone else get that vibe? Yeah. We should probably throw open to the audience if anyone has any questions. And there should be a mic there, and I don't know where
Can we get Jordan to read out a little bit of his book?
Yes. While we do that, I do want a reading, and beautifully done there, Tweak. Jordan, can you give us a reading from Big Time?
Sure thing.
And I'll read the Kylie poem afterwards. You're dying to hear that one, yes. One person. Okay. And then so you'll have all this time to think of possible questions.
Or rants.
Or rants. Or just general comments about the festival or something.
All right. I thought I'd read a bit, saying what I was saying before about like building the sort of the world around the band, the entourage, the hangers-on. This is a moment where the band in my book, The Acceptables, have been given carte blanche and given this beautiful Belgrave rainforest recording studio, and they've spent 180 days there and still haven't finished their album. And Julian, the bass player, is clashing with Ash, the lyricist, over the main lyrics. Julian doesn't say much during the recording sessions after that. He shows up at 10, stands in his spot, and plays what he's told to. There are no jam sessions or lyrics brainstorms. There's certainly no room for improvisation. Ash drills bars with individual band members until he's satisfied. Other times he halts the session and storms over to sit with the sound engineers, listening to a particular riff or melody on a loop before storming back from the nave and covering the band's sheet music with large black crosses and penciled-in semiquavers. Days often stretch into the early hours of the morning. Skinner brings pastries for breakfast, sushi for lunch, pizza for dinner, and for some inexplicable reason at about 11:30 each and every night, he puts together an exquisite charcuterie board teeming with grapes and figs and cheese and cured meats. The board inevitably sits collecting flies and condensation before being stashed away in the fridge upstairs. The church also features a busy rotating roster of friends, lovers, and collaborators. I'm there a fair bit, getting a head start on a puff-piece band profile commissioned by Deadbeat, the FREA's sole remaining music magazine. Cleo's there from time to time just to talk shit and raid the kitchen. If Skinner's charcuterie ever disappeared overnight, I could guarantee I'd find it back at our place the next day, all the cheese eaten but the figs untouched. And while Julian and some of the others had been on the fence vis-a-vis the church recording studio, Ludlow, our photographer, is in love with it. They're there 3 or 4 days a week, getting shots for my article and a hardback making-of coffee table book that the label plans to release to coincide with the album, buzzing through the space with their old Nikon wearing, drinking in the mottled light, the scaffolding and the candle holders, the yellow roof and the eerie depth of it all. Ludlow produces a frankly stunning series of oddly baroque band portraits, documenting week 1, week 3, week 5, week 10, and so on, marking the band's hairstyles changing, their roots growing out, their nail polish chipping, muscles popping out from under tank tops as they shed any excess weight, oily sweat beading on unkempt stubble, and the persistent looks of grim concentration as Xander and Julian and Tammy make the daily attempt to wrap their heads around Ash's new musical vision, which includes aspects of jazz, soul, hardcore, math rock, kawaii-core, and folktronica, sometimes all within the same song. The tougher the session, the finer the photographs. Tammy, in particular, has never seen herself captured quite like that. She stares at Ludlow's proof sheets for a very long time, silently undergoing some sort of radiant self-reappraisal. Thanks.
What about both of you having to sell? You know, you make art and then you have to sell it. It's like, Christ, another job.
Well, we're here, aren't we?
Yeah, but to buy our books. But you also so you write about having to, well, the maybe the aura around a band and everything that goes on around a band, the ecosystem, and you in your collection Essence here, you have a poem that touches on publicists and actors and having a liaise. Like there's a whole sausage being made that kind of, if everybody knew about the sausage being made, I don't know, would it affect the enjoyment of the sausage? Because the book touches about the sausage making and you live it.
Sometimes I think it's best not to know how the sausage is made. You're more likely to enjoy it. I'm just going to quickly do it. So we're missing one person, and you know, Kirsten here, who was one of the editors of this book, would probably do more of a spiel than I would have, because she's not here, so I feel like I need to speak on her behalf. So Kirsten and Angela are the co-editors of this amazing book. So what it is, if those who don't know, so there are all these writers, and not just poets, like short story writers, just prose writers, memoirs, and we were told, all right, you all get to pick one Kylie song and write about it. And not necessarily, you know, some writers stick closely to the song and others go in totally random and weird directions. But that was just like a jump point to this collection. So I totally recommend this book if you love Kylie, and I know loads of people love Kylie. And like play the song first, and then the memoir piece or the poem or the short fiction or whatever else that someone has written about it. So I was completely amazed at what people wrote, all different genres, all different styles. And yeah, honestly, if I was Kylie, I'd be thrilled that my songs were the inspiration points.
Certainly Kylie performing at Rod Laver, it was very interesting to see who came out of the woodwork as Kylie fans, because she hasn't played in Melbourne for so long. It's like, wow.
So many fans, there's so many dress-ups. And you know, the thing about Kylie, I don't think, this is what I mean about being snubbed. I don't care what you say about her music. She is so joyful. A lot of the time she's just pure joy, isn't she? This little pink bubble of confectionery, I think of her. It's like a little fairy. And you know, how can you be mad at that? How could you be snob? You know, how can you be snobbing gum? Like, this is just like bubble gum. So bubble gum is sweet and you know, it gives you that burst of energy. So everybody can shut up, you know? I'm not a huge fan, but I would just not detract her either. I wouldn't like go, this is terrible.
No.
Because she serves a purpose. You can have your heavy rock, you can have Kylie, you can have jazz. Why get shitty and you know?
Yeah. You never knew you'd die in a ditch for Kylie, but here we are.
Yeah, I know, right? I never knew, but people do change. I'll quickly read out this poem.
Cool.
So I chose the poem, the song Shocked. Now, we all know how many Kylie fans are in the audience here. You know the song. One. So I'm not going to sing it. So basically the first line is something like, shocked by the power of love, okay? We all know it, you know. And that pretty much explains the entire timbre of the entire song, shocked by the power of love. So she's writing and singing about, oh my gosh, I just met someone and this person is making me feel all giddy and I'm spinning around and it's all fantastic. So all very positive. So, of course, me being me, so, you know. So I decided to go the other way. It started off being wonderful, but then I decided to not be so positive, just to show you that you can do whatever you want. We weren't told how or what to write. So this is my version of Shocked. Reading the typography of your face, and I am shocked. The blood rush to my own. And also, I forgot to say, there are Kylie titles in this poem too. I should be so lucky to run my fingers along your faint blue veins. Once again, I am shocked. The red, bright life of you, my hand on your heart. And that's also Kylie's song. The four chambers of my own. The quiver and pulse when you shadow near. The thrumming heat of you. Such long lash flickers. And I am spinning around, shocked. Wishing I could step back in time to where all the lovers breathe to keep the inevitable at bay so I won't be shocked. When we're finally parted and you stand cold as stalactite. So that's my version of shock. So basically it's like you start off wonderfully, falling in love with this wonderful person, and then all of a sudden this person becomes cold and you are ghosted. You know, it's like beginning to end of a love story. It's like, oh my gosh, you're here, but then where are you? And why are you cold to me?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I just realised I took a train from Frankston to Morwell to watch to see Kylie's hot pants. There's an exhibition out there. Yeah, so evidently I'm in.
Well, that's about in the intro of that, I think. They were in like the Arts Centre foyer museum, and you can't touch them now because they'll crumble because they were bought from a $2 shop like 40 years ago.
That's right. John, can you tell us all about F? I have a question about F, and can you tell us about F and how it relates to the story? F is a drug.
Yes, F is a pretend drug. Don't get too excited. In my book, Big Time, which is only available in the sort of like locked off, semi-fascist eastern states of Australia, which you deliver a drop to each eye, and depending on your tolerance and how much you put in your eyes, it shows you your future. So in theory, if you took enough, you would see to the end of time. You just might never come back. Yeah.
And now, there's obviously ways that F plays with music and musicians. You're right that it diminishes anxiety.
Well, wouldn't it, if you knew what was happening next? Like so much of anxiety, and especially performance anxiety, just has to do with, what's about to happen. And if you knew for certain one way or another, presumably you could go out and just have the time of your life, presumably.
Yeah. There's also athletes that have almost tantrums with reality or tantrums with destiny by tanking. If were the drug to exist, can you explain why it bristles with people? And then I have a follow-up question that's related to music.
If it were to exist.
How it bristles with people's conception of themselves and how the world operates.
Well, I think it has a sort of a little bit of a flattening effect ultimately, where you think that knowing what's going to happen is going to be this beautiful golden opportunity, and then you'll be able to really sort of appreciate it all the more. But all it actually does is kind of like take the excitement and the surprise out of life, and take a lot of the joy, certainly for the characters in the book, take a lot of joy out of performing music, say, and then they'll occasionally have to go out and perform a gig without having just dosed with F and feel that kind of like that rush and that thrill of a live performance again. So it's really kind of, again, it's an industry and an art form that relies so much on fear in a way, and you kind of have to be able to tame it without cutting it out altogether.
Yeah, and reading about a tennis player, say tank and lose a Wimbledon final, 6-love, purely because to test what's expected of them. It does make me think about making art and what the audience expects and what you expect of yourself, and expectations as a rule, and how you both approach expectations in your work.
You mean like generally expectations of work?
Well, you're free to interpret that any way you like, but I wonder whether, expectations of this is. I've written 2 collections of poetry. This is,
the expectations. I think the first one gave me a lot of grief, the turbulence, because I didn't know what I was doing, and because I was known primarily as a critic. So that moving from critic to poet was really odd, because I was on the other side of the fence for a long time, and now I was actually a primary creator. So it's like, oh my God, so this is what people are talking about when they're scared of critics, But Essence being my 3rd collection, I was a lot freer. I just thought, I just don't even care. I was happy enough that my publisher of the first 2 was happy to take it on again. So they obviously believed in me. And so I just felt a lot freer. And I whatever expectations, I just hope there are people out there who enjoyed the first 2. Whenever you did, well, the 3rd one is similar. I didn't change my style radically to fit the market, because I don't believe in that. You write what you write, and if other people like you, great. And if you don't change yourself, because you're not honest and you're not true to how you write, and that reflects badly in the end. We all become really cynical and go, right. I wrote an actual poem about it, because oh no, if you really want to make money, you have to write crime fiction or something. But I'm never going to write crime fiction. I don't care how much money, it's just never going to happen. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that completely. I was lucky in one sense, deeply cursed in another, to have my book acquired when I was halfway through writing it. And so the first half of writing it was an absolute joy and one of the easiest, most pleasurable things I've ever done. And then as soon as I knew that people were actually going to read it, it became extremely difficult because of the expectations that you're talking about. And the only way I think really through that is to do exactly that and really just ask whether you love it, and kind of, maybe it sounds overly simplistic, but actually just writing it for you and nobody else. And it's I think that shows through in the book as well in the characters, right? Like there are kind of three main albums. There's the first album that they break out with, and it's meant to be this kind of like naff pop rock, like Killers-esque mid-2000s, just happy-go-lucky, but essentially mindless, And then there's their kind of like really aggro punk stuff that they go into because they think they need to be all political. And then there's an album towards the end, which is like your kind of 60s, 70s, like Donovan, Jefferson Airplane type of thing. And of the three albums, the only one that actually really endures and the only one that actually truly kind of lives on in the culture is the first one, even though it's the one that everyone's kind of making fun of for being of such little substance. It's the only album that the band actually made when they really believed in what they were making and they really loved what they were making together. And all the other ones were cynical attempts to make something that other people wanted to hear.
Yeah.
I'll just a quick story. I remember seeing the Strokes when they were just new and brand new, and they came to Melbourne, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And they were
they supporting UMI maybe?
I can't remember, maybe, but they were like, very like new and refreshing and wonderful. And I was so struck by their energy and their power. And then I saw them like a couple of years ago, and it was like they're phoning it in. It's like they're so bored of their own material. It's like they just lost the love. And I took, and I was so disappointed. It was like, what happened to you guys? Where's the passion?
I saw the Arctic Monkeys do a gig like that too, where they like didn't say a single word to the audience at the Tower. Didn't even make eye contact.
Didn't say welcome Melbourne or anything. It was like complete, we're going to play our set and then we're going to move on. It's like, oh my God, you guys have just, there's no love there anymore. You're just doing it for the money. And it's so sad when they do that. They lose that. I don't know, that passion that they once had when they were young. And when you're young and you're hungry and you're trying to prove yourself, and then you end up being world-class famous, and then you're like, I don't care anymore. I'm like, don't make us.
I wouldn't know about the second.
No, I'm not. We're not going to play last night because you all won it, so we're not going to do it. So it's like, I was like, oh my God, why can't you play the song that we all know you for? That was like that, and I hated them for it.
Yeah, I've been thinking broadly about when an era is over, and can I mention your book? Is that all right? What was your name again? Nick Martin. Was a photographer, a band photographer, or you spent a lot of time at the Ballroom?
In the early 80s,
yeah. And there's and you have a book here, and it's incredible shots of the Ballroom, that era, and I don't know what that was like for you. We'll give you the microphone if you like a question. Sorry?
Is that with Nick Cave in the Ballroom?
Yeah, well, but I suppose when an era is over, that's okay. I was lucky enough to be in the writing department of The Late Show with David Letterman, and it was great. But if he had the show again, it wouldn't be the same. Yeah. It's finished, and it's beautiful that it happened.
Sometimes you just want them to retire on the high, don't you? Instead of doing these stupid reunion tours over and over and over again, so they need the money and
just diminishing return.
Sad, and they're just, I don't know.
And it's about making room as well. I think every time I see a band reunion tour or a reboot of a show or a seventh sequel in a film series, it's like that's taking attention and resources away from people who could be making something new and actually kickstarting whatever the next era is, instead of us just kind of like living in the afterglow of the previous one.
Well, book Big Time is being published, I think, in the UK coming up, and Russia and Italy.
Italy, yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay, so obviously you're going to encounter your own second album syndrome or whatever. How are you going to punch through that?
I'm punching through it right now, and it's hell. Yeah, truly. Yeah, it couldn't be more perfect that I wrote a whole book about how torturous it is to recreate something, and now I'm struggling to do it.
Yeah, but if the thoughts into your mind like, well, they love this one, I'll give them more of what I think that red meat is.
Yeah, the thoughts do, and I think the best thing to do is as soon as you see that direction, you turn and go the opposite direction. I think.
Right.
Yeah, like, because again, if you were to create something that's kind of just a reheated version of this, it could actually diminish something you made that you were really proud of. So it's kind of better to go, like, I love it when an artist, when a musician or somebody releases, people are like, oh, I like their old stuff better. Nah, I don't care. Like, throw it all at the wall, do something just
Regurgitate the song,
crazy.
the old stuff better than new stuff, like the regurgitated song. I love the way love the way they take the piss out of themselves with that song. It's
Exactly.
great.
I mean, they know it's up, but just something new, I think is.
We're at risk of running over time. If we threw the microphone out to the crowd, does anyone have a question or?
Anything at all. We're happy to talk about anything.
I think it's getting shorter. I think maybe a generation used to be 50 years, almost a human lifetime, and in that span, people would relate to and appreciate the same things. And I think it's accelerated rapidly to the point where it now feels like, in terms of music and fashion, a generation is maybe half a decade. Like, just whiplash, I think, and just the sheer influx of new stuff, of choice, I think.
Well, my answer for some reason arbitrarily is 20 years, but also I have to stop myself from getting grumpy old man about it. The idea that, okay, well, when did Spinal Tap come out? Like, now I know it, and I'm the huge Christopher Guest fan, and you go back, it's weird. Everything's available to you, and yet I genuinely hear people go, well, I wasn't born, and so why would I know that? And so, but you've never had more opportunity to see it. And I wonder even about A Complete Unknown. It's like, what does having Timothy Chalamet, the It guy, talk about Bob Dylan, embody Bob Dylan, does that keep Bob Dylan going in the public consciousness for another 50 years? It's just something like that. And that's what I mean about having to package things and sell them, and how that's also important. And when I was growing up, I didn't think that much about it. I just thought I liked things, and they were on my radar organically. But nothing's on your radar organically. People have worked hard to get it onto your radar.
This is how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
See, that marketing is everything. These people, those of you who don't know, like, sometimes you go into a bookshop and you're drawn to a particular book. There's a reason, and it's all marketing, okay? So usually some big presses have paid a lot of money to get it there, to be it on the screen, on the window display, all of this stuff. There's a lot of noise about certain books, and that's why they rise to the top, and smaller presses like mine or whatever else, you don't have enough money. So,
well, sorry to interrupt, but the winner of the Victorian Premier's Prize for Non-Fiction, Susan Hampton, she won for a book, I don't know, Anywhere But Here, I think is the name of it.
Yep.
I interviewed her on Thursday, the day after, and there was not a copy to be bought in Victoria.
Fantastic.
And it's like, okay, she might just drop off the radar. Like, this is a moment, as annoying as it is, and you have to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a copy to buy. So what happens? It might fall away and be a footnote. And doesn't speak to the quality of it.
Does that say that there's no copy because they're all bought?
No.
Really?
There was some garbage with Cyclone Alfred, but then she had a conversation with the publisher and they said we could send 60 down.
Right.
It's like, well, they should have already been on the way.
Yeah.
And then I was reading about AC/DC, and it's like, oh yeah, you think AC/DC? Now I'm completely naive, but there was a machine operating as well. It's not. There was a sexy package to sell, and they were cynical about it, and that's not a crime because they're dealing with the world the way it is, not as it should be. Wow. I know. Yeah. How about you're looking at me like you've seen a mental health episode? Does anyone else want to chime in before we wrap up and we send everyone off back into the Clunes?
Can I hear the music? That's an excellent question. Certain songs, yes, but then others, I think because there are certain tracks as well, like fictional tracks that the band write in the book, which are meant to be almost impossible. And again, that's the joy of me not having to back it up by actually writing the song. I can say it's in a 17/9 time signature and it's 9.5 minutes long. In that case, no, I don't know what it sounds like, because I think part of the joy is actually confounding people with this, theoretically impossible song. For others, I do, and for others, some of it was I had like a sort of, aborted like solo musician phase in my late teens where I had a guitar and I would write music, and some of those melodies ended up, I think, in my head with the music that's there later in the book, but no one will ever hear them.
I've got a question for you, Jordan. Are you a musician? Do you play?
No.
Okay.
I used to sing, but
Okay.
Yeah, and so did you have a follow-up? And we were for the audiobook. Originally, there were grand plans to like record the albums and commission versions of it, and I've always thought how fun that would be. But yeah, as I said, for some of the tracks, it's very challenging, if not impossible. Yeah.
Oh, look. And what about if a band called themselves The Acceptables? How'd that go down with your legal team?
I don't know if I have a legal team.
Well, yeah, exactly. Stay tuned. Well, Jordan Prosser's debut novel is Big Time, and Tweon's latest poetry collection is called Essence. And I'd like to give you all to give them a round of applause.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Clunes Booktown Festival is presented by Creative Clunes. Tax-deductible donations to keep our stories alive can be made at creativeclunes.org.au. This podcast has been made possible due to the generous support of the Hugh Williamson Foundation.